Hello everyone, this is lesson 8.5. The title of this lesson is Elevation and Depression. Okay, before you keep watching this video, if you have not done lesson 8.4 or you have a hard time with lesson 8.4, I do not recommend that you move on to lesson 8.5. You need to build up the skills from 8.4 to be able to do this lesson. Now, the good news is if you have done 8.4 and you feel confident about it or feel like you understand it, then I would highly recommend you go to 8.5 now. The good news is 8.4 is very much like 8.5. The only difference is that there are word problems. So I'm going to give you guys a moment. If you need to pause this video, I would actually like you all to take out worksheet number 5, which is normally a homework, right? And your homework is to do the odds, but we are going to do the evens together in this video, okay? And what you need besides this worksheet, you're gonna need a separate sheet of paper, and you are definitely going to need a calculator that has the buttons sine, cosine, and tangent, okay? So if you don't have that out, please feel free to stop this video and get it now. Otherwise, let's talk about what is elevation and depression and what this lesson is even about. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but this whole chapter has been about right triangles, okay? Especially 8.4, 8.3, 8.2. Basically, the whole chapter has been all about right triangles. And these word problems are actually all about right triangles. It's just now using them in real life. As you can see here, if you kind of skim through it with your eyes, they talk about things like a kite, a hill, a pole. And you're basically going to be drawing out these right triangles and how they would apply in real life. More specifically, the word elevation you're going to see every now and then in a word problem. And just so you know, elevation means to go up, right? Anything that's moving up or you're looking up. And depression, not in terms of sadness, but depression is just the opposite. Instead of looking up, means looking down. Now, sometimes these words are not mentioned in your word problem, but there's similar words like climb. Climb means to go up, okay? Or decline, which means to go down. They would pretty much have the same concept. Or another way of looking at it is basically you're going to have to read out the scenario and figure out what they mean is if the angle is elevating, meaning going up, or if the angle is going down, depression. Let's talk about a few other things before we start. There's SOHCAHTOA. We mentioned this in class. And SOHCAHTOA is just basically that sine equals your opposite over hypotenuse, cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent equals opposite over adjacent. And like I mentioned, if you haven't done 8.4 and you really don't get the groove of this yet, you're going to have a little bit of a hard time understanding this particular lesson. Otherwise, if you know how the setup of this works, let's actually get started. Let's start off with number 2, and I'm going to read it out loud. I may stop in between the sentences because maybe there may be an important part to this. So let's start with number 2. It says, a ladder is leaning against a wall. All right, so stopping right there, that's pretty important. I can kind of draw this out. And the way I can draw it out, I already kind of had it pre-drawn, is a ladder going up, right? And a ladder goes up this way, is leaning up against a wall. And this could be your wall. So this is your ladder, this is your wall. Let's read a bit more. The foot of the ladder is 6.5 feet from the wall. Now, foot of a ladder means the bottom of the ladder is 6.5 feet away from the wall. So from here to here, it is 6.5 feet away. And as you can see, you can already notice that you have a right triangle. Draw in that right angle there, okay? Let's keep going though. The ladder makes an angle of 74 degrees with the level ground. So they're saying that from the ladder and the ground, okay, a ladder goes up, all right? And even though they don't say the word elevation, you know that this is elevating because the ladder is always up. It doesn't really lean downwards, right? And it's at a 74-degree angle. So I put the number 74 there. And let's keep going. How high on the wall does the ladder reach? round off your answer to the nearest foot. So they want to know the reach of the ladder. They want to know how high this wall is, or how tall is this wall. And because I don't know, I need to represent it with the letter X. All right, so now that you have your setup, you always want to make sure that you have two numbers and a variable in any, either on two sides or an angle, okay? And pretty much, I need to now figure out if I'm going to be using sine, cosine, or tangent. So how can I tell what I'm using? I look at the angle, and I notice that right across, I am looking for X, or I am looking for my opposite. Now, they don't give me a measurement for my hypotenuse, but they do tell me that my adjacent is 6.5, all right? Lastly, right, if I notice that I have opposite and adjacent, I'm going to be using the one that uses opposite and adjacent, which is tangent. Now, when I write it out, I always put the tangent of the angle, and the angle in this case is how many degrees? 74 degrees. So tangent 74 equals your opposite over adjacent. So my opposite is X. My adjacent is 6.5. From here, what I need to do is solve for X. That's the beauty of it, because we're looking for the height. Now, how do I solve for X normally? Well, X, and it's dividing with 6.5. So I need to multiply both sides by 6.5, okay? The 6.5 on this side cancels, and I'm gonna write this now as 6.5 times the tangent of 74. Now that I have X by itself, time to use my handy dandy calculator, okay? If my calculator is not like yours, that's okay. As long as you have the buttons, that's fine. What you also need to check is if you are in the right format. If you notice, most calculators will say DEG in the right-hand corner. If your calculator does not say DEG and it says something different like RAD, that means it's not in the right format. Please send me a picture of your calculator so I can help you change it to the right format, okay? So we are going to basically now check if it's in the right format. In my case, it is. And I'm going to now type in 6.5 times the tan of 74. So 6.5 times the tan of 74. And take a look at how it's written, and it equals that big number, 22.668. Now the question up here, it says we're going to round off your answer to the nearest foot, meaning the nearest whole number. And that just means that X is approximately 23 feet. And that's my answer. So I was able to get the height of the wall. Let's do a different one. Let's try number 4 here. Okay? And I'm going to start off by reading what it says. It says, from the top of a tower, 80 feet high. Okay, so I got a tower here. Now, I'm not going to literally draw a tower. If you want to be that artsy, that's fine. Here's my tower. My tower is 80 feet high, meaning it goes up 80 feet. Keep going with number 4. The angle of depression. Depression means that I'm going to have an angle that's going downwards. Okay? So I'm going to have an angle that goes down. Okay? And it says of an object on the ground. So here's my object on the ground. And it says that my angle of depression is 38 degrees. So this is 38 degrees. And you can already tell this kind of already looks like a right triangle. So kind of finish it off. This is the ground anyways. Let's keep going. Find to the nearest foot the distance from the object to the foot of the tower. So here's my object, here's the foot or the bottom of my tower, and we're looking for how far this is. Now that you have it set up, we need to now make sure that we use sine, cosine, or tangent. And again, you always check to see what they give you. Across from the angle that they give you, they talk about the opposite. And they don't really give you hypotenuse, but they do mention that X is the adjacent. Opposite and adjacent, just like what we just saw a moment ago, is tangent. So again, similar setup. I'm going to do the tangent of the angle is 38 degrees, equals opposite, my opposite in this case is 80 over x. I now need to solve for x, and x now is on the bottom, unlike this one where it was at the top. So I'm going to multiply both sides by x, and I'm still left with x times the tangent of 38 equals 80. Then I still don't have x by itself, so I need to divide tangent 38 on both sides. Now that I have that, all I need to do is use my handy dandy calculator, and we're going to type it in as such: 80 divided by the tangent of 38. So 80 divided by the tangent of 38. And this gets me 102. And again, as it says in question 4, it says find to the nearest foot, meaning nearest whole number. We're going to round this to the nearest whole number, which is x is approximately 102. And since we're talking about a side, feet, 102 feet. That's how you do number 4. Let's do a few more, and I'm going to do it kind of on the back of this. If you need to kind of take a glance, pause the video now. Otherwise, let's get on to number 6. Now I am going to go a little bit faster. Let's talk about this one here. It says a boy who is flying a kite lets out a string, 300 feet of string. When you fly a kite, your kite kind of goes diagonal, and the string is all of this, so 300 feet, and which makes an angle of 52 with the ground. So here's my ground. So the string and the ground make 52 degrees. And as you can see, you're already starting to get that right angle. Let's check what they're asking for here. It says, assuming that the string is stretched taut, meaning stretched all the way out, find to the nearest foot how high the kite is from the ground. So this should be the kite. This is the ground. They want to know the height from here to here. Again, we need to figure out what we're using. If I take a look across, I have opposite, and then, hey, they actually give me my hypotenuse. So I'm probably not going to use tangent, but which one has opposite and hypotenuse? That's right, your sine. So when I set it up, it's your sine of the angle, in this case, the sine of 52, equals opposite. What's my opposite? X over 300. To solve for x now, you multiply both sides by 300. And you have 300, sorry about that, 300 times the sine of 52 equals x. Use your handy dandy calculator. See if I can pull it out here. And let me just check. We're doing 300, right? And then times the sine of 52. Type the random button. And I get 236. So, and since we're talking about the height from the ground, that means x is about 236 feet from the ground. That's how high the kite is. Let's keep going by doing number 8. Now, number 8 is kind of the rare one in this case. And you're going to see why when we actually read it, especially what they're asking for in the end. It says, in order to reach the top of the hill, okay, so I have this hill, which is 250 feet high, okay, so I have a hill. I'm not going to actually draw a hill, but we know that from the top to the bottom of the hill, it's 250 feet high, right? one must travel 2,000 feet up a straight road which leads to the top. Okay, so I got to get to the top of the hill. If I'm starting from the bottom, got to go to the top, and that's about 2,000 feet. Now, if you're noticing here, normally we're always missing a side. So what do you think I'm going to be missing here? Let's take a look at what they ask for. Find to the nearest degree the number of degrees contained in the angle which makes the which the road make with the horizontal. So now they're asking for the angle. And which angle? Well, they're talking about from the road to the ground. They want to know how many degrees this is. Now, this is a bit different because when we're looking for the angle, we're going to be using different buttons. More specifically, we're going to be doing one of these inverse buttons. I don't know if you can see it there, but it says sine with a -1, cosine with a -1, tan with a -1, but they don't really say with the -1. It's just the inverse of sine, inverse of cosine, inverse of tangent. And we need to first figure out what we're even doing. We need to figure out if we need to use sine, cosine, or tangent. So this right here is across, meaning this is my opposite. And hey, again, they give me my hypotenuse. So just as before, if I'm using opposite over hypotenuse, I'm probably using sine. Now, when I set it up, I do the sine of the angle. The problem is I don't know the angle. So I write the sine of x equals my opposite, 250 over 2,000. Now, if you don't like this fraction, there's one of two things you can do. You can simplify this fraction, and when you do that, it gets you 1 over 8. Or you can rewrite this as a decimal. You can do 250 divided by 2,000, and it will get you 0.125. Either one of these, if you use either one of these, that's fine. I know a lot of students like to use the fraction way, especially if their calculator will let them. Mine does, so I am going to do the fraction way. If yours doesn't, I recommend you divide it out and get a decimal, okay? For now, though, if we're looking for the angle, we need to actually do the inverse of sine. So it's going to look like this, the inverse of sine, and we are going to type out of 1 over 8. So it's going to look something like this, and this is what's going to help us get x now. So the inverse sine of 1 over 8, and I got 7.18. If I remember what it says here, it says to the nearest degree. So nearest whole number, that's 7. So that means that that angle is about 7 degrees. All right? So this is pretty much, if you notice the gist of it, I'm going to do one more, which is number 10. And again, I'm going to do this a bit quicker. It says a guy wire attached to the top of a pole. So there's a wire attached to the top of a pole. So here's my pole. What a wonderful pole it is. And I'm going to see that this wire reaches a stake in the ground, meaning like a stick on the ground, in 20 feet from the foot of the pole. So there's a stake on the ground. And by the way, this is obviously going to make a right triangle, as you're noticing over and over again. This wire is going to go down, and to be exact, as it mentions here, it's the pole reaches 20 feet from this stake or from this point on the ground, okay? So 20 feet from this point on the ground. Let's keep reading though. And it makes an angle of 58 degrees with the ground. So here's the ground. It makes an angle of 58 degrees. We now need to find something, obviously. Find to the nearest foot the length of the guy wire. Well, remember, this is the pole. This is the wire that goes to the ground. And again, I need to figure out if I'm using sine, cosine, or tangent. There's no opposite. However, they give you an adjacent, and this is your hypotenuse. So if they give you adjacent and hypotenuse, I am going to be using cosine. So because they already give me the angle, I'm going to do the cosine of the angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. I now solve for x by moving x on both sides. However, x is still not by itself. So what do you think I would need to do next? That's right. Divide by the cosine of 58. And x equals 20 divided by the cosine of 58. I use my handy dandy calculator to type it out. So 20 divided by the cosine of 58. And I get 37.7. Let me see what the directions tell me to do. Find to the nearest foot. So this needs to be to the nearest whole number. This is about 38 feet. All right. So this is pretty much the whole gist of lesson 8.5. It's basically getting word problems. And if you notice, I just continuously drew a bunch of right triangles. And I realized if I needed to use tangent, sine, or cosine. Remember, if they give you the angle, it sits right next to the sine, cosine, or tangent. If they don't give me the angle, I need to represent it with x, and later I need to just do the inverse. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at any time. Hopefully this has helped each and every one of you.